Whoop! Welcome back, Warrior Fam.
Yay!
We are so excited for today's episode.
Yes.
Well. What are we talking about?
Well, we are talking about all the things.
Oh,
that-
all the things. Got it.
The things. We're talking all the things. But more importantly, here we go. All the things that we tried to do to fix ourselves, to fix our anxiety, to fix our humanness. And basically how both of us were seeking the external, to help us. But that ultimately led to more stress and more anxiety. And so we'll share some stories on all the things and the ways that we tried to fix ourselves, and what ultimately allowed us to start to heal and help ourselves.
Yeah, totally. And I think that one of the reasons why we harp on this so often in the podcast is this idea of like anxiety isn't something that's meant to be fixed.
Yeah.
Or that we as humans that are just going through experiencing big human emotions don't need fixing. There's nothing like inherently wrong with us. And like we've said many times, that doesn't mean that if you're experiencing something that's too big for your tools, that you shouldn't go and seek that external help from therapists or trained professionals and doctors that can help you.
I mean,
but it does mean,
our anxiety is connected to our nervous system. Are we fixing our nervous systems? Like when you said that, it's like, you can't fix it. It's part of the nervous system. Like it's here with us. So how do we navigate it? How do we care for it? How do we soothe it? You're not fixing it because it's part of being human.
But part of what we see a lot just in our world are these ideas of like, here's how you fix your anxiety, or buy this thing over here. And that's going to help you just go ahead and say bye-bye to that anxiety, basically that human feeling.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, let's learn about it. Let's be curious about it. Let's navigate it.
Yeah.
Like you just said. So
yeah. So I'm excited. I feel like a lot of people that have anxiety and have challenges with their humanness have definitely gone down many different rabbit holes, maybe drank some snake oil along the way to try to fix their anxiety. So I'm very excited for your story about your journey of fixing and realizing maybe this isn't the way.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so as an anxiety warrior, right? And through a very reflective and compassionate lens of myself, I know now that I have suffered with anxiety for most of my life from a very young age. And while I didn't know that it was anxiety until I was, entering adulthood and starting to figure out, okay, now that I know what this is, here are some of the things that are contributing to that. And here are some ways that I can try to work through it. And this was well before I felt safe and comfortable enough to talk about it. I worked extra hard all the time. And I've talked about this several times with many of my stories, to put on a brave face and never say the words, I have anxiety, out loud to other people, because I felt ashamed or weak in admitting it to myself, and certainly outwardly. I wanted to keep it hidden. So I figured if I could just fix it, right, or work it out all by myself, that I'd be better off and nobody would ever have to know.
Right. Nobody will know you're human with anxiety.
Right. It sounds so nuts given how open I am and we are now about this stuff, that like, how is this person ever able to not talk about how anxious she was all the time? It honestly blows my own mind half the time. I'm like, I really spent more than half my life just keeping it hidden, keeping it to myself, assuming that if I don't put out this front of being strong and having it together, that I'm going to fall apart even more than I already feel like I'm falling apart inside. Right. And so a lot of the rabbit holes that I fell down focused on the external work and never gave me or allowed me to be or feel curious or ask myself, what do you actually need?
Right.
And it was like how often I would forget I had a body.
Yeah.
That sounds really crazy maybe to some people, but maybe not. It's like, why aren't I turning to myself, my inner knowing, and saying, what do you need right now? What
Right.
can I do for you? Or at least be curious about what I need.
Right.
And so some of the things that kept me from being curious about what I needed were really pretty mantra card decks.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And they called to me in that external way, right? It's like, oh, okay. And we know that I'm a word heavy person. I wrote a children's book. I'm very passionate about reading, and writing has always been such a huge um, outlet for me through my youth and through my college days, and certainly in my work as a professional. Um, but at the end of the day, all the mantra decks, right, that were meant to help and serve me,
Yeah.
they weren't my words.
Right.
And that's,
Yep.
I think, what I realized I needed after a long time of,
Yeah.
I was like waking up every morning and flipping through the cards and
Yep.
trying to find the perfect one. And this one has pretty colors. And okay, I'd
Yep.
like to feel more orange today, whatever the heck that means.
Yes. Yeah.
I want to feel more pink. And I was sort of associating the way we do with the labels of our world with, like, if it's pink, it's happy. And if it's orange, it's warm. And, you know, as opposed to being curious.
Yeah. Now wait,
And so,
I have a
yeah,
question.
please.
So when you had these decks, right?
Yeah,
Would you like say to yourself like, okay, what do I need to hear today? And then pull one out, or like, what do I need to remind myself? And then like just let like magically pull one out, or
that's the
you
thing.
choose it.
I was never satisfied with what I
Just
pulled, ever.
never.
Never.
Wow.
Almost never. I mean, maybe not never, but almost never. I would
Mm-hmm.
literally spend like minutes just like finding what I thought was going to be what I needed, when
Yeah.
really the problem was is that I didn't know what I wanted or needed
Yeah.
because I wasn't asking myself, right?
Right.
I was just looking through these decks where it's like, I just need to anchor to a word or a phrase, and I'm not going to look to myself to find those words or phrases. I'm going to,
Mm-hmm.
this card deck must suck. I better get another one that has more information. And by information, it's also subjective and not necessarily based on anything like
Right.
research
Right.
based or science based. And not that it has to be, right. And I want to drive home that, like, there's nothing wrong inherently with card decks that have,
Right.
that draw the eye and that have powerful, empowering phrases on them. It just wasn't serving me.
Right.
But I kept feeling the need to, instead of be curious and ask myself and trust that I have the words and phrases that I need to anchor to help
Mm-hmm.
myself get through this anxious moment, going to it to say, well, tell me how I should feel. Tell
Yeah.
me what I need to do right now. Help
Right.
me. Help me, little 4-inch card. It's so insane to remember, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, these things didn't help at all. They created this illusion of empowerment while slowly
Mhm.
causing me to question my feelings.
Yeah.
And so it was like when I would pull a card and it said something on it that I didn't think I needed, I would just try to find a different one, right? As opposed to just like saying, this is a waste of my time and only making me more anxious in the
Yeah.
process. And setting me up for a crappy day potentially, or, I'm about to go have this experience. So I want to anchor for a second. And so instead of asking myself, hey, Margot, like, let's reflect, let's open up an empty book and do
Mhm.
the things that, as someone who loves to write and
Yeah.
reflect, needed that whole time. Uh, and so it was always leaving me with this ever present state of a fixed mindset
Mhm.
over the
Mhm.
growth mindset, right?
Yes.
And so this left me feeling more hopeless. And when these fix it tools didn't work, I just felt all the more lost. And so I realized that these things weren't working for me when I learned about Carol Dweck's
Mhm.
growth mindset,
Yep.
and how limitless everything that makes up our personalities can be when we accept things like struggle and
Yeah.
failure and stress and anxiety as challenges, not
Mhm.
blockades, right? Or as a launch pad
Yeah.
for growth and change and evolving, right? And so it kind of
Mhm.
allowed for space in my mind and heart and body, and that curiosity that I'm always seeking,
Yeah.
right? For the lack of fixing,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
it's the exact opposite of fixing. It's creating space for curiosity. So when I
Yeah.
learned about, like, oh, these cards are putting me in this fixed mind, or that they're
Mhm.
keeping me in this fixed mind, as opposed to a growth mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love this. I love this. So first of all, I didn't know that you read that book. I
Oh
read that
yeah.
book. I love that book. Game
Yes.
changer for me too.
Huge.
But you're right. It's such a shift having a fixed mindset of like, this is who I am, right? And
Mhm.
I can't change it, but I'm going to try to hide it. I'm going to pretend it doesn't exist and I'm suffering on the inside. And then maybe it's rippling a little bit out on the outside versus, okay, this is who I am now. And with practice and effort and patience, I
Right.
can change and shift my relationship to who I am to start to become who I want to be.
Yeah, and it just felt like once I allowed myself to say, I can't go to the external anymore to
Yeah,
seek help.
right.
I need to pay more attention to the thoughts and feelings that are coming up and not shut them down, right? Which is
Hmm.
what I was doing through most of my life
Yeah,
before I was able to notice that I was anxious, was saying like, don't tell anyone you're feeling like this. Don't
right.
show anyone that you're upset or that you're feeling like this. Keep it in, keep it to yourself, figure
Mm,
out the things you need to do to help. But none of those things helped anyway, because they were all outside of me.
right, right.
Yeah.
And then what a switch. Like when you all of a sudden are like, okay, the external stuff isn't helping, but I can go inside and I can find my own answers. I can figure out what it is I
Right.
truly need. So what shifts for you now when you're like, huh, wait, let me pause and ask myself, what do I need? Like what happens now?
Typically so like I said, I'm anchored to words and language
Mm-hmm.
in a very positive way
Yeah.
now. And I always did, but these pretty cards, they kept me from coming up with what I needed in the moment, right? It was all
Right.
just like, here's a random phrase that's like, how am I supposed to anchor to what's going on with me if the phrase has
Right.
nothing to do with what's going on with me, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I pull a card that has to do with empowerment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm feeling exhausted in my body, and the
Yeah.
idea of trying to feel empowered is just so far from what I feel
It's
like I need right
draining.
now.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So what I do now typically is I sit down every day with a journal. I do a lot of writing when we podcast. I write down
Mm-hmm.
words and thoughts and phrases that come to mind, not just so I can remember them because I want to remember them, but because
Yeah.
they give me an idea, or they make me
Mm-hmm.
curious about something, or it's like, all right, I'm going to explore that later. And so I write down a lot of what I'm just noticing come up. And
Yeah.
I notice that when I can sort of um, take this time and space and the practice of brain dumping in my own open ended way,
Mm-hmm.
uh, that's what's empowering to me.
Yeah.
That's what makes me feel like I'm better connected to myself and I don't have to hide what's going on. And it's not like I'm pulling out a microphone to go podcast about every single woman feeling, or let me go on Instagram live and share everything that's going on in my mind, although that can be sometimes be very helpful.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the community that we're always talking about, right? But for myself, no matter what's going on, whether it's anxiety or not,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm able to just sort of write down what's going on
Yeah.
physically, mentally, and emotionally. And sometimes I even just write those words down. I write physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll just reflect upon those things in the moment that I'm at. And I just feel safer and calmer, period,
Yeah.
because I have this sort of outlet to express what's going on without
Right.
having to have a conversation with somebody or
Right.
seek any kind of validation. But I've
Right.
also just lucky enough to have reached a place where I don't need that. And some
Right.
people might need that reassurance or to bounce how they feel off of another person. And that's
Right.
great. Like, so one of the things we want to do here is remind folks that whatever is working for you
Yeah.
is wonderful.
Great.
You may love mantra decks. They may serve you, right? Like, and
Right.
that is awesome.
Right.
If it feels good, you should keep doing that.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with
We're
that.
not
I'm just
knocking those
simply,
decks.
yeah, I'm really not. I'm
Yeah.
truly not. So I just want you to know. I just want anyone to know, and I'm sure what you're going to share too. It's like
Yeah.
the stuff that doesn't serve us doesn't mean that it's bad or that
Right.
you shouldn't feel served by those things.
Right.
It's just another practice of knowing yourself
Yeah.
and or getting to know yourself
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of my go-to, is to kind of brain dump in my journal,
Yeah.
or just when I anchor onto a thought or a phrase, it's like, "Ooh, that feels good in my body right now. I'm going to
Mhm.
anchor to that."
I love that. And I love that you're using anchor, right? Like
Yeah.
that word, that language there, because right, holding that pen or that pencil and having that piece of paper, it does anchor you into the present moment, and it anchors
Mhm.
you into, having the awareness of your thoughts and your feelings,
Right.
and like I love the language that you're using, but also
I'm
that.
in charge of the mantras.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And in charge of what you need right now, and in charge of your own clarity, like by that brain dump, I'm sure you get some clarity from that.
Yes. Yeah, it feels like an unleashing, right?
Yeah.
It feels like I've busted through something, right?
Mhm.
And it doesn't always take me to anywhere special, right?
Right.
That's not the purpose. The purpose is
Right.
just to get out some of the way I'm feeling
Yeah.
in words, because that's what serves me best.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And we all have these internal resources we can tap into, rather than the
Right.
external, like just to see what's going on internally that we need.
Yeah.
Love
Totally. All right. I'm
it.
looking forward to hearing some of these rabbit holes we've
Oh
dived
my
into.
goodness. So I feel like my rabbit hole might be a little bit more swirly and cycly and deep, not deep like deep, but like just all over the place. Like my rabbit holes,
It's a
I was
spiral.
a spiral of rabbit holes and all going in different directions. So I very much relate to like the knowing that something was wrong, right? But like for me, it was really confusing because I had some like pretty like secure, confident, easygoing friends. And so when I would share stories and I like suffered more than other people, and like or like the same thing would happen to me and a friend, and like I would respond in a heightened way than my friend, it
Yeah.
reinforced there was something wrong with me. Like that was the message I got, because how does my friend not react in such a big way, or why am I more dramatic than others? Right. So there was this,
Huh.
yeah, constant reinforcement that there's something wrong with me because my friends were more stable. So what started this journey in the rabbit hole was Pema Chodron. And some people say Pema, some people say Pema, but Pema Chodron wrote a book. She wrote many books. And one of them was When Things Fall Apart. And it was like my very first introduction to mindfulness and into the wellness world and into the witness self. And it was my first introduction to, not all thoughts are facts.
Mm.
And that book was so helpful, right? But that book opened up a lot more of what's possible for me. Well, if I can watch my thoughts and not all my thoughts are true, what else is possible? What else is real?
Mm.
Um, so with this information, I then saw this movie shortly after I read that book called What the Bleep Do We Know? And if you research now, you find out that one of the people that was talking on that movie also financed that movie. And if you've ever heard of Mark Vicente, he kind of regrets making that movie. So I'll just say that about the movie. But the premise of the movie is our thoughts create our reality. And to an extent, that is true, but not in the
Right.
way that the movie made it seem. But for me, I was like, wow, I can create my own reality. And then I did a workshop, and the workshop reinforced that idea. So, I'm like sitting at home and I'm like, what do I want to create? And like, I'll start small. I want to see a small black dog. And then, like, later in the day, I see a small black dog and I'm like, oh my God, I created
I
that.
did it.
Right. So, I would have like sitting with visions, and there is nothing wrong with sitting with visions. There is actually great research that shows that visioning a future is helpful, not in the
Mhm.
way I was doing it. Right. Um, from there, I like read these books by people being channeled by other spirits in other realms that were talking about positive emotions and how when you have only positive emotions, you raise your vibration and then you attract more positive stuff in your life. And then from there, I found out about Brian Weiss and his theory on reincarnation and how sometimes to have a better life now in our current life, we need to heal our experiences in our past lives so that we can fully live this current life without past life baggage. And then, from there, I got into crystals and healing my chakras. And oh, if I have kyanite crystal and I hold it to my throat, I will speak up for myself. And if I have rose quartz and I hold it to my heart, then I will love myself more. And if I bathe them in running water in a river and put them under the moonlight, then they will be more powerful and cleansed and my life will be better. Right. So
oh, that's all. Got
that's it.
That's it. Life's better.
Life is better. And I even like so in the Brian Weiss, he's like a psychiatrist who was doing hypnosis with someone, and that's where he came across past lives and stuff. But in that book, it was like, oh my gosh, maybe I need some past life healing. And so then I went into hypnosis and tried a few hypnosis sessions. And hypnosis actually did help, but not with my past lives. It actually helped me relive a childhood trauma where my mom and I like got run over by a car, but in a safe way, which actually did help. It actually changed some of my nervous system, like in a better way, in a more settled way. But I didn't do any past life stuff because whatever, I didn't do past life stuff. So anyway, so all this stuff for a while was feeling good. I felt like I'm in charge, I'm empowered, I create the life I want. I'm having a hard time. I hold a crystal to some area of my body. It's going to make me better. And for a bit, this stuff all felt really good. And then one day I was walking down the street in Queens and I was talking to my mom about a family member that had been recently gotten ill and they were in the hospital. And this guy came up behind me and stole my phone out of my hand in broad daylight. And I got it back, but it definitely gave me some like light PTSD. And I'm at home and I'm sitting there and I'm like, why did I create this? Like, I haven't had thoughts about someone stealing my phone. I haven't had, and then I started to become afraid of my thoughts because if I created that in my life, what else am I creating in my life that I'm not knowing? So it started to turn into a lot of stress and anxiety. And, anytime bad thoughts, negative, unpleasant thoughts crept up, it was like, oh my God, what is happening now? Like, this is dangerous, And ultimately what happened was three things happened. One was I started studying with Leslie Kaminoff and Amy Matthews. And they're like go-to affirmation, mantra, whatever it is question your answers. And so anytime I asked them anything about yoga, right, they would ask me to question it. And so when we one day were talking about chakras, Leslie said, he wasn't going to get too much into his own belief about chakras, but he likes to think about chakras as a language to explain an experience. Just like if I was really excited or nervous and I said to you, Margot, I have butterflies in my belly, you would know I don't have insects in my belly. But it's a language to describe an experience, right? So I started questioning some of the stuff down these rabbit holes that I was going in. At the same time, I started learning about trauma and the ACE, the adverse childhood experiences, and how the more trauma you have in your life, the more likely, you'll have health problems later on. The more likely you might be repeating unserving patterns later on in your life. And so some of the stuff that was in this like self-help, law of attraction, new agey world did fit with like trauma, but it's not so easy as you think your trauma away. It's just not.
Right.
Um, and then the other thing was, my dad got cancer. And I was like, my dad did not create this. Like, his childhood trauma probably created this. Like, he definitely had a traumatic upbringing, but his thoughts did not create his cancer. And so I started to question all of this stuff. And I really just realized that, like, this world I was in was not helping. It was hurting. It was making me anxious. It was making me doubt anything I did. It was making me question my reality rather than feeling empowered in my reality. Um, and it just made me realize that all of this external stuff, right, made me reliant on it, right?
Mm.
Like if I needed to feel good, I had to go buy a citrine crystal to embrace my personal power, right? All you
Right.
crystal lovers will totally get what I'm saying. um, um, and like, if I whatever I need, I keep needing it from other people, right? I need to
Mm.
heal my past lives, well, I have to go to some hypnosis person or whatever, hypnotist or whatever. And I started to really just realize that these things can be helpful, like we said, right? I'm not knocking them, but for me, they turned into a source of stress. They turned into a source of like just too much pressure on myself.
Right.
um and what actually helped me, right, was understanding trauma, understanding the nervous system, understanding brain development, because that gave me the understanding of my mind body connection. And that gave me the compassion for my human experiences and why I was having different experiences than my friends.
Mm-hmm.
And then understanding all of that science based stuff helped me figure out how to navigate the world by soothing my nervous system from the inside, like breath, rather than going to the outside, like a crystal or a person.
Right.
Um, and so that was really what happened for me, was the more I educated myself about the human body, um, the more I realized that there was nothing wrong with me, and that I had resources within me that could help me and support me and soothe me, and that I didn't need to be fixed. But that outside world of
Right.
wellness and new age and everything was telling me I had to be fixed because they make a lot of money if I'm trying to fix
Exactly.
myself.
Right. Well, it's like that's why it's called a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's just like it's like a pyramid scheme to a certain extent. You get this one thing and it leads to the other thing and then this thing. And then, oh, wait, but in order to get to that level of empowerment, you need this extra thing over here. And here's how much it
Yeah.
costs. And here's how much this. And what I love the parallels between our stories is that external versus internal. And what I'm
Mhm.
hearing, or what I feel like I'm hearing, is that it sounds as if the common thread was that you were consistently seeking information
Yeah.
from a variety of different sources.
Yes.
And none of those sources were your own mind or body.
Right.
Right. And so, like, similar to what I was kind of sharing, it's
Yeah.
like, where else can I turn to? What can I web and latch on to that
Yeah.
may serve me? Right. That's
Yeah.
inevitably causing you more anxiety in the long run
Yeah.
because they're not working, because they're
Right.
meant to be fixes. And
Right.
we know now, as you said, now you have information about trauma and unhealed
Mhm.
trauma and all of that. So, and when you were saying about about crystals specifically, which I don't have any experience with crystals, but like what kept coming up in my mind was these are functions, these are things that are meant to try to trick your mind or body
Yeah.
into feeling or being a certain way,
Yeah.
as opposed to actually do the work of getting to know why you're experiencing the things that
Right.
you are.
Right, right. Holding a crystal to my throat did not change my behavior to speak up for myself. And,
Right.
I still have those crystals. I think they're beautiful, right? Some of them are very smooth. I like to hold them in my hand and rub them or keep them in my pocket. But those crystals are not helping me speak up, and those crystals are not helping me love myself more. That is a process of understanding being human and going within to see what you said before, like, what do I need to meet my needs, not what
Right.
is the external world telling me I
That you
need.
need.
Yeah.
Right. And what you were saying too about your dad didn't create his illness, right?
Yeah.
And how infuriating that notion might be. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm just imagining somebody saying, well, and just what people do, right? They try to rationalize away people's human suffering, whether it
Yes.
be physical, mental, whatever. And it's
Yes.
like, no, there may not be any kind of, I mean, you said that maybe your dad's, childhood trauma may have
Mm-hmm.
contributed to his illness, but maybe it didn't, right? And
Right.
there's no way of knowing.
Right.
And
Right.
and so the idea of even planting that seed that somebody might be deciding on some sort of unconscious level
Yeah.
to kill themselves slowly with a terrible disease is
Right.
so infuriating.
Right. They created it in this lifetime or in a
Or a
past
past
life.
life.
Like, and the thing is, like, I'm so glad you're saying this because, like, I kind of was a jerk when I first, like, dove into this world and, like, challenges came up for other people. Like, in my mind, I was like, well, why did you create that? In my mind, I was like victim blaming or victim shaming people for experiences. And I feel terrible about that now. It's like, of course you didn't create your cancer. Of course you didn't create, to the like, I'm going to give myself cancer because I need attention. And this is coming from a wanting attention. Right? And so I'm so glad that you're bringing that part out too, because in some of the stuff of law of attraction and some of these other, things people might, get joy from, you also want to make sure that you're not blaming people when terrible things happen to them.
Imposing it on anyone else.
Yes. Yeah.
Going back to that idea of like, if it serves you, that's great. If someone's curious about it, okay, have an honest conversation about your personal experience with said thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, there needs to be a lot more consideration in the things you communicate to others about their experience when you really have no idea what their experience is like.
Right. And, at best, if you're offering advice or, unsolicited advice, maybe it's helpful, but at the worst, it could be harmful. And some of this stuff was causing me more harm than help. And some of the things people said to me, like when I told someone about my dad's cancer and someone was like, well, he should try a wheatgrass treatment, was more harmful than helpful. And so we always want to help, but sometimes like let's people find their own answers from within.
Right. I think just over and over again, what we're constantly met with this thought of what people really want is to be listened to.
Yeah.
People just want you to listen to them, to be with them, to sit with them more than they want your help. And even if they say, can you please give me this concrete example of a time in your life? Okay, then maybe you do that. But what they really want at the end of the day is mostly not for you to share too much about you, but to be with them and to listen, specifically when it comes to familial illness or any kind of trauma like that. I know that's a little bit of its own separate thing, which we could always, this could be its own thing. I feel like a broken record.
There's so many own things.
Just like you're always like, this is my favorite topic every week. Yeah. You're like, this is my favorite topic. Wait, last week was our favorite topic. Oh,
next week will be our favorite topic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So interesting. And I think what's common among both of our stories is that the external is great, but the internal is better.
Yes.
Learning how to be curious and focus on what your body is actually telling you.
Yeah.
What your thoughts actually are telling you.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, oh, I must have when that guy took my wallet, right? Like, what must I have been thinking about that made that happen? It's like, how is that going to be a solution to the anxiety of hoping that you don't get robbed from the next week because now
was I having lack mentality? Was I thinking I didn't have, enough
I don't need this phone
in my life?
I said wallet. I meant to say phone.
No,
I said wallet for some reason, but it's equally important, right? It's like,
the same
I
thing.
wanted that to be taken.
Yeah. I needed attention. I needed, like you go down your own rabbit hole of why did I create this? And I didn't. Someone saw me walking with
Yeah.
my phone in my hand and they saw it as an opportunity.
Exactly. And I think it's important too that we say that that doesn't mean that and you said this a little bit, that doesn't mean that the energy that we bring into a space doesn't have an impact on
Mm-hmm.
other people or
Right.
yourself. It doesn't mean
Right.
that your thoughts are powerless and that, you have to succumb to any thought or whim or idea or feeling that you're experiencing,
Right.
because those things are real to a certain extent in the moment, right? Not all thoughts are fact. We know not all
Mm-hmm.
thoughts are true, but we do have some power and agency over the things we think
Yeah.
and how we feel. And there are things we can do to help ourselves feel and think differently. So I just
Yeah.
want to make clear that, like, it's not that we're saying that these things are impossible and you shouldn't try to do them. It just means that when bad things happen to us or when we're experiencing anxiety, it doesn't mean that we created it solely
Right.
through our mind
Right.
or our thoughts or our
Right.
feelings.
There's always
Yeah,
lessons that can be learned, but it doesn't mean we blame
right.
ourselves for the experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Wonderful. So,
Awesome.
okay, Abby, I've been in suspense the whole episode.
Oh,
What was
yeah.
your win this week?
Yeah. So my win was a stepping outside my comfort zone win.
Mm,
You all have heard me talk about kickboxing and stuff. And ever since I've moved to Colorado, I found community in like improv. But I haven't found community in some type of working out. And the pandemic kind of made that harder. So, lately I'm like, okay, I need to get out of the house. I need to do something. And I found a local cardio place, fit place. I won't call it a gym. I won't call it a kickboxing place. They do a blend of stuff. And I tried it out.
nice.
And so I went, and the ladies there were really super nice. I'm on the fence if this is something I want to continue. But the first step to making change is to actually do something. And so I've been sitting and thinking about doing something for a while. And I figure
Mhm.
I won't know until I keep trying. And
That's
so I went.
amazing.
Yeah, I had a nice cardio workout. The ladies were very nice. I was sore the next day. And now I just did this the other day. So now I'll see if I want to go back.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
It's such a hard thing to start something new. And so
Yes.
it's awesome that you were just like, I don't know if this is going to be like the as amazing as kickboxing was for you for all those years,
It
or if it's going to
wasn't.
be your next new fad or a thing that you anchor to and that you
Yeah.
grow to love so much and find so empowering. But you went and had a great workout and a great experience. And sometimes
Yeah.
that's all it is, right? You can just
Yeah.
live in that you had a great
Right.
experience. And even if you don't go back, then okay, move on.
Right. It was fun. I could laugh at myself because I felt goofy a few times in my body, right? Some things felt a little silly, but
Sounds like me in kickboxing.
yeah. Yeah. So, it wasn't everything I hoped for, but that's okay because
Mm,
it's still possible, and I can keep putting myself out there and trying new things again.
right. And maybe
Yeah.
you decide to do it one more time and make sure that it wasn't
Yeah.
right.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
Or maybe not, like whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm willing to check out. They have a few different classes, so I'll check out a few different ones just to really get the vibe before I make a solid decision.
I'm so curious what kind of class this was that made you feel kind of goofy. Now I'm like picturing what goofy might feel like for you.
It was like a whole bunch of mixed stuff. So it had a little bit of kickboxing, and then it had a little bit of like lightweight training. And then it had this thing that was like kickboxing without a bag and doing stuff across the midline. So like your one foot's doing
Oh.
one thing and your other arms across the other side is doing the other thing. And like they didn't actually like stop and teach. They just were like,
Wow.
okay,
Just
now
go into
this.
it.
And my brain's like, wait, what? I'm confused, and I'm just like flailing everything around. And so that was, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Yeah.
it may just have been a teaching style too that doesn't work for you.
Yeah, and that was the mixed class, but so there's one, they have like different dedicated classes, and one of
Mm.
them is that part of the class. So I know I don't want to go to that.
All
But then
right.
they have other classes that are more just with weights and strength, and more that are just with the bags. So I can try
Okay.
those out. Yeah.
So you got some new information.
Yeah. Yeah.
An added win on the win.
Win on the win.
Wins on wins on wins on wins on wins. I love it. Okay. Amazing. All right,
Yeah.
warriors. Thank you so much for being here as always. We love you and we want to hear from you. So reach out to us at anxietywarriorspodcast@gmail.com. Shoot us an email over there. Let us know what's on your mind, what's on your heart. What are you thinking about these days? Are there certain topics you're interested in hearing us talk about? If you have questions, we'd love to hear from you too. If you're interested in being a guest on the podcast, you have an interesting anxiety story to share, reach out, send us a little message,
Yes.
and join us over on Instagram. Our community is at Anxiety Warriors Podcast. And you can see me do some silly dance videos and some tips on how to squash anxiety and some stuff that works for us. And of course, some fun videos and audios of Abby and myself and our wonderful, wonderful guests.
Yes.
And if you have a moment, please jump over on Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and review.
5-star
reviews. Yep, 5 stars, please. 5 stars. Don't even think about it. Just hit the 5-star review button.
And then hit it again.
Right? Just to make sure. A double tap sounds good. That's what movie was that from? The double tap. It was like the Zombieland. You do the double tap and you shoot the zombies. It was a whole thing. Anyway, hit that double tap, 5-star review for us, silly warriors. You love us. We love you. And write a little bit about what your thoughts are on the pod.
Yes.
Even if it's just a sentence, we appreciate every word from you warriors. And thank you for being here.
Yeah. Maybe you love Zombieland and you want to let us know. That would be great. So thank you all. Thank you so much for going on this journey with us. We are definitely so grateful that you all are here with us.
Till next time.